I walked into our apartment early and heard my fiancée practicing vows for another man at 2:07 a.m. I literally said it out loud by myself because my brain couldn't process what I just heard. Can you imagine hearing the person you're about to marry whisper somebody else's name like it's the most normal thing in the world? I'm not talking about a misunderstanding, not a weird joke, not a movie on TV. I mean her voice, low and careful, practicing vows. And the name wasn't mine. I'm Jordan, I'm 29 years old, and I'm from Columbus, Ohio. Before we get into it, hit like, subscribe, and comment so this doesn't die in silence. And comment where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now, your city and your local time. I want to know who's up with me for this. Now let's go back to 6 weeks ago when it all started. 6 weeks ago, life felt normal, busy, a little stressful, sure, but normal. Her name is Kayla. We'd been together almost 2 years, engaged for 5 months. We weren't rich, we weren't flashy, but we were building something that felt real. We had our little routines. She'd do this thing every morning where she'd stand in the kitchen with one sock half on, holding her coffee, staring out the window like she was buffering. I'd tease her, earth to Kayla, and she'd smirk without looking at me and go, "I'm loading." We had a small apartment, second floor, thin walls. You can hear the neighbor's dog's nails tapping on the hallway tile at night. We had one couch with a dead spot in the middle that swallowed your keys if you sat wrong. We had Milo, yeah, same dog name as half the internet, I know, except ours was a cat, orange, loud. He screamed at 5:30 a.m. like he was being paid to do it. Wedding planning was happening, but it wasn't consuming us. We were doing it bit by bit. A venue tour here, a guest list fight there. Normal. And I'll be honest, I wasn't perfect. I get anxious about money. I'm the guy who opens a spreadsheet for fun. Kayla is the "we'll figure it out" type. That difference caused friction. I'd ask for exact numbers. She'd roll her eyes. I'd get quiet. She'd get mad that I got quiet. We'd make up, rinse and repeat. But nothing about us felt like it was about to explode. Then the little things started. The first sign was her sudden obsession with privacy. Not like, "give me space." That's normal. I mean, she started locking doors inside the apartment. Bathroom door, sure, fine. But then she started closing the bedroom door and turning on the bathroom fan even when she wasn't showering. That fan had this rattly sound like a loose screw, and it would pulse on and off when it struggled. I'd be in the living room and hear that fan going, and it didn't make sense. I asked her once, casual, "Why's the fan on?" And she said, "Because I like the noise." That was weird. Kayla hated noise. She sleeps with earplugs. She complains about the microwave beep being too loud. Second sign, she started going for walks at night. Kayla is not a night walk person. She's a blanket burrito person. But suddenly after dinner, she'd put on sneakers and a hoodie and go, "I need air." I'd say, "Want company?" And she'd go, "No, I just need to clear my head." The first couple times I respected it. Everyone needs space. But the timing started to get specific. Like she always left around 9:40 p.m. Not 9:20, not 10:05, 9:40. It became this little detail I couldn't unsee. Third sign, she got weird about our wedding website. We made one of those simple wedding sites. Names, date, venue info, RSVP link. She was excited about it at first. Then out of nowhere, she started insisting we remove parts. "Don't put the venue address," she said. Why? I asked. Safety, she said. Kayla, it's a wedding. People need the address. We can text it to them, she said, like that was normal. Then it became, maybe we shouldn't post engagement photos. Then, let's not share it yet. Then, can you change the password? I said, why are we acting like we're in witness protection? She laughed, but it was thin. I just don't like everyone knowing stuff. Fourth sign, she started taking calls and stepping outside. Not work calls, not her mom, not her best friend. Just random calls where she'd glance at her screen, stiffen, and go, I'll be right back, and slip out onto the balcony. Our balcony is tiny, 2 chairs, a little plant she kept forgetting to water. You could hear cars passing on the street below, and if the upstairs neighbor walked, you could hear the creak of their patio door. I'd sit inside and hear her voice, but not the words, just the tone, soft, careful, like she was talking to someone she didn't want to upset. I asked her straight up, who is that? And she said, it's my cousin. You don't know him. That should have been the end of it. Maybe it really was her cousin, but the way she said it, it wasn't, oh yeah, my cousin. It was stop asking. Fifth sign, her scent changed. This one sounds stupid, but it's real. Kayla used this coconut lotion. You could smell it on her hands, on the sheets, on the hoodie she stole from me. Then one week, she started smelling like this clean, sharp soap. Not bad, just different. Like a hotel bathroom soap. Like those little white bars you get wrapped in paper. I said, new lotion? She went, oh, yeah. What's it called? She paused. I don't remember. Kayla remembers everything. She can tell you the brand of a chapstick she bought 3 years ago. So when she said she didn't remember, it stuck in my brain like a splinter. I didn't accuse her. I didn't go full detective. I tried to be better. I tried to reconnect. I planned a weekend trip. Nothing crazy, just a cabin about an hour out. Kayla agreed. She even seemed excited. We packed Friday afternoon. Milo the cat screamed because he hates seeing luggage. Kayla laughed and said, he knows we're leaving him. We left. We drove. We talked about music. She rested her hand on my thigh like everything was fine. And for a moment, I believed it. Then we got to the cabin. We walked in. It smelled like pine and that weird artificial cinnamon spray people use in Airbnbs. Kayla went to the window and looked out and said, this is beautiful. I hugged her from behind. She leaned into me. And then her phone buzzed. I wasn't trying to look. It was just on the counter next to the keys. The screen lit up. One word. Tonight? No name. Just the message preview. Kayla's whole body tensed. She grabbed the phone fast and smiled at me too wide. Just my coworker, asking about a shift. At 7:48 p.m. on Friday, I said, joking. She didn't laugh. Yeah, hospitality is weird. Okay, we had dinner. We drank wine. We watched some dumb show. I tried to relax. I tried to believe her. At 11:30 p.m., she said she was tired. We went to bed. I woke up at 2:07 a.m. I know the exact time because the cabin had a digital clock on the dresser with huge red numbers. 2:07. I woke up because I heard Kayla's voice. Soft, not talking to me. I sat up. The room was dark, but I could see a little light coming from the bathroom. The door was half closed, and I heard her. Not full sentences. Pieces. I promise, she whispered. Then a pause like she was listening to herself. I choose you. Another pause. And I will. Always. My heart started doing that thing where it hits your ribs like it wants out. At first I thought, Maybe she's writing vows. For me, that would actually be sweet, right? A surprise. Then I heard it. A name. Not Jordan. Not even close. Ryan, she whispered. I froze. I sat there upright in the dark, staring at that half-closed door like it was a mouth about to swallow me. She said it again, quieter. Ryan. And then she laughed, a tiny laugh. Like she was embarrassed, like someone was listening. Then I heard the bathroom fan turn on, that rattly pulse sound. My hands went cold. I got out of bed. I didn't storm in. I didn't kick the door. I walked like my body was moving through syrup. I pushed the bathroom door open. Kayla was standing in front of the mirror. Phone in her hand? No, nothing in her hand. Just her hands gripping the sink. Her face snapped toward me. Her eyes were wide like a deer in headlights. I said calmly, "Who is Ryan?" For 1 second, she just stared at me. Then she blinked fast. "What?" I said. "I heard you." She shook her head. "You're half asleep." "I'm awake," I said. "I heard you practicing vows. You said Ryan." Her face changed. Not confusion, not surprise. It was more like calculating. She swallowed. "It was a video." "A video?" I repeated. "Yeah," she said fast. "I was watching a vow video. Like, examples. People do that." I stared at her. With the fan on, whispering the name Ryan. She got defensive instantly. "Oh my God, Jordan, I can't do anything without you turning it into something." My throat tightened. "So you're saying I didn't hear what I heard?" She raised her voice. "I'm saying you're acting insane." I stepped back like she'd shoved me. There it was. That word, insane. Not let me explain. Not, okay, yeah, that sounds bad. Just, you're crazy. I said, "I'm going back to bed." She snapped, "Fine." And I walked out. I lay there staring at the ceiling while she stayed in the bathroom for another 10 minutes. Fan running, water running. Then she came back to bed and lay down facing away from me, like she was the injured one. I didn't sleep. The next morning, she acted like nothing happened. She made coffee. She fed Milo through the camera we had at home, because yes, we were those people. She asked me if I wanted eggs. I said, "Are we going to talk about last night?" She put the spatula down hard. "No, because it was nothing." "It didn't feel like nothing," I said. She looked at me with this cold patience. "Jordan, you woke up, you heard a word, and you built a whole story." I said, "So who is Ryan?" She sighed. "No one." I watched her. I watched her mouth. I watched her eyes. She didn't look like someone telling the truth. She looked like someone repeating a line. We drove home early. The cabin trip ended like a balloon losing air. No fight, no yelling, just silence. Back at the apartment, things got worse. Now I was noticing everything. The door locks, the night walks, the balcony calls, the wedding website paranoia. And now this name in my head, Ryan. I tried to be normal because I didn't want to ruin our lives over a misunderstanding, but I kept hearing her whisper it in my brain. Ryan. A few days later, we were on the couch, and she was scrolling on her laptop. Not her phone, laptop. We share the Wi-Fi. We share the streaming accounts. We're supposed to share a life. I said, "Can we just clear the air?" She didn't look at me. "About what?" I said, "About what I heard." She clicked her trackpad hard. "Jordan, I'm not doing this again." "Who is Ryan?" I said again. She slammed the laptop shut. "No one." Milo the cat jumped off the armrest like he'd been shot. Kayla looked at Milo and then back at me, angry. "See? You stress everyone out. I laughed once, and it sounded ugly. So it's my fault? She crossed her arms. Yes, actually. You're insecure. You've been weird lately. You keep interrogating me. I'm not interrogating you, I said. I'm asking you one question. She leaned forward, voice low, like she wanted this to feel serious. Do you trust me? And I wanted to say yes. I wanted to just say yes and have this vanish. But my body wouldn't do it. I said, I don't know. Her face went hard. Wow, I said, because you're not giving me anything. She stood up. Fine. If you don't trust me, maybe we shouldn't get married. And then she walked into the bedroom and shut the door. That line hung in the air like smoke. Maybe we shouldn't get married. It felt like a threat, but also like she was testing if I'd beg. I didn't beg. I just sat there, feeling embarrassed that I was even in this position. That night she went on one of her walks, 9:40 p.m., like always. I watched the clock. I hate that I did that, but I did. At 9:52, I heard her key in the lock. At 10:03, I heard her again. Wait, no, that didn't make sense. At 10:03, I heard the lock, but she never came in. I got up and looked through the peephole. Nobody, just the hallway. I opened the door quietly, and there it was, a folded piece of paper wedged under our doormat. My stomach dropped. It wasn't a note like, call me. It wasn't a threat. It was a printout, a legal-looking form. At the top, big letters, Notice of Return Mail, and under it, ATTN, Kayla M. Sanders. Sanders. That's not her last name. Her last name is Lewis. Kayla Lewis. I stared so hard my eyes hurt. I flipped it over. On the back in smaller print, I saw an address and a line. Domestic Relations Court. I felt my skin go cold. Why would a court be sending mail to my fiancée? Why would it be returned? And why would the name be Kayla Sanders? I went inside and sat down at the kitchen table with that paper. The overhead light buzzed like it always does. I could hear our fridge click on. Normal apartment sounds while my life quietly fell apart. When Kayla came in at 10:18, she was cheerful. Too cheerful. She said, "Hey, babe." Then she saw me holding the paper. Her face changed instantly. "What's that?" she asked, but her voice already knew. I held it up. "This was under the mat." She blinked fast. "Why are you looking under the mat?" I said, "Because the lock moved and you didn't come in. Like someone put something there." She swallowed. "Okay." I point at the name. "Who is Kayla Sanders?" She stared at it. Then she laughed. A short laugh. "That's not me." "It says your first and middle initial," I said. "And it's our address." "It's a mistake," she snapped. "A mistake from Domestic Relations Court," I said. She grabbed it from my hand. "Give me that." I didn't let go. Her nails dug into the paper. We stared at each other like we were playing tug-of-war with the truth. I said calm, "Tell me what this is." Her eyes got shiny, and for a second I thought she was going to confess. Instead, she went angry again. "You are unbelievable," I said. "Kayla." She shook her head. "You don't trust me. You accuse me. Now you're digging through mail like a psycho." I said, "Stop calling me that." She threw the paper on the counter. "Fine. It's nothing. It's old." "Old? Old what?" I said, "Old what?" She looked away. "It's from before. I had issues." "What issues?" I asked. She exhaled. "I don't want to talk about it." I said, "You don't get to do that. You don't get to act shady for 6 weeks, whisper another man's name, and then tell me you don't want to talk about it." Her jaw clenched. "I didn't whisper another man's name." I stared at her. Don't. She looked at the floor. Her shoulders slumped. The anger drained out like someone pulled a plug. And then she said very softly, "It's complicated." That phrase, that useless phrase. I said, "Start somewhere." She sat on the edge of the couch like she was about to be interviewed. She rubbed her palms on her jeans. And she said, "My name used to be Sanders." I blinked. "Used to be?" She nodded once. I said, "Why?" She swallowed hard. "Because I was married." My brain didn't understand. "Married?" She nodded again, eyes wet. "A long time ago." "How long ago?" I asked. She looked up at me and I saw real fear now. Not performance, real. 5 years, she whispered. 5 years. Kayla's 27. 5 years puts her at 22. I said, "You were married at 22. She nodded. "It was a mistake." I said, "You never told me." She wiped her cheek fast. "I tried to forget it." My head started pounding. "Are you divorced?" She hesitated. One beat too long. My stomach flipped. I said slow, "Kayla, are you divorced?" She whispered, "Not officially." I felt like the room snapped into silence. Even the fridge hum felt louder. I said, "So you are still married?" She shook her head fast. "It's not like that." "It is exactly like that," I said, voice rising. "You can't be not officially divorced. That means you're married." She started crying. "I didn't know how to tell you." I said, "Who is he?" She whispered, "Ryan." There it was, Ryan. I felt my face go numb. I said, "So you were practicing vows for him?" She shook her head. "No, no." "Kayla," I said, "don't lie again." She flinched. "I wasn't practicing vows for him. I was, I was practicing what I would say." I stared at her. "To who?" She whispered, "To the judge." I didn't even know what to do with that. I said, "Explain, right now." And she did in pieces, like she was pulling glass out of her throat. She said she got married young because she thought it would fix her life. Ryan was older, charming, the type who makes promises like they're easy. She said it ended fast. She moved away. She changed her last name back socially, but legally she never finished the divorce paperwork because she couldn't afford it, and she was scared, and she wanted to pretend it didn't exist. I sat there listening, feeling like I was watching my own life from across the street. I said, "So why now?" She wiped her nose. "Because he found me." My stomach tightened. "How?" She pointed at her laptop on the coffee table, like it held the answer. He, he reached out." I said, "When?" She whispered, "6 weeks ago." 6 weeks. When all the weird stuff started, I said, "So your night walks, your balcony calls, the fan, the name, it's him." She nodded, crying harder. "He said he wanted to finalize things." "That sounds good," I said, bitter. "So why are you practicing vows?" She shook her head fast. "Because he said he wants to try again." I stared at her like she'd slapped me. She rushed, words spilling out. "I told him no. I did. But he keeps saying he changed. He keeps saying we had something. He keeps saying—" "You're engaged to me," I said. "I know," she cried. "I know," I said. "Then why are you entertaining this?" She looked down and whispered, "Because I'm scared of him." That landed differently. I sat back. "Scared how?" She hesitated. "Not like, not like he's going to hit me or something. No, he's not that. It's more, he knows how to get in my head. He knows things about me. He makes me feel like I owe him." I clenched my jaw. "So he's manipulating you." She nodded, wiping tears. "And I hate that it works." I sat there trying to breathe. Part of me wanted to comfort her. Part of me wanted to scream. Part of me wanted to call the whole wedding off immediately and run. Because what do you do when you realize the person you're about to marry never told you she's already married? She said quiet, "I'm sorry." I didn't respond. Then she said, "I didn't cheat on you." I looked at her. "You don't get to decide what counts." Her eyes widened. "I didn't. Jordan, I didn't sleep with him. I didn't meet him like that." I said, "So you met him?" She froze. I said, "Kayla." She whispered, "Once." My stomach sank. "When?" She wiped her face. 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago, I remembered. 3 weeks ago, she said she was meeting Jenna. 3 weeks ago, she came home smelling like hotel soap. My voice came out flat. "Where?" She whispered, "A coffee shop." I said, "And then?" She shook her head. "Nothing. We talked." "You talked," I repeated. "And you didn't tell me." She cried. "Because I knew you'd react like this." I stared at her. "Like what?" "Like someone who wants the truth." She covered her face and sobbed. And I just sat there feeling like a fool. Because here's the thing, she didn't just hide a guy. She hid a whole marriage. She hid a whole legal reality. And now the name Ryan wasn't just some random person. It was her husband. And suddenly my life had this weird legal shadow I didn't ask for. That night I slept on the couch. Not to punish her. I just couldn't be next to her without hearing Ryan again. At 3:12 a.m., I heard her crying in the bedroom, and I hated myself because I still felt sorry for her. The next morning I told her, "We're not going to pretend this is okay." She nodded silently. I said, "I want to see everything. All messages, all emails, everything." She looked offended for half a second, then her face softened like she knew she had no right to be offended. She opened her laptop, and that's when the twist hit. Not the first twist, not she's still married. I thought that was the twist. I thought that was the big reveal. No, the real twist was how deep this went. She opened her email and typed court in the search bar. A bunch of emails popped up, not just divorce paperwork. There were emails about a new application, a marriage license application, dated 2 weeks ago. My blood went cold. I said, "What is that?" She stared at the screen like she wished it would disappear. I said louder, "Kayla, what is that?" She whispered, "He filed it." I blinked. "He filed a marriage license application with you." She shook her head, frantic. "Not with me. Like, he filed his part. He can start it. He needed my signature." "And did you sign it?" I asked. She hesitated. That hesitation was everything. I said very quietly, "Did you sign it?" Her voice broke. I didn't know what to do. My hands started shaking. I said, "Kayla, did you sign it?" She nodded once, barely. I stood up so fast the couch cushion popped back into place. Milo the cat sprinted away like I was a threat. I said, "So you were going to remarry your husband?" She cried, "No." "How is that not what that is?" I snapped. She stood up too, shaking. "He said it was the only way to finalize things faster. He said if we remarry and then file for dissolution." I cut her off. "Stop, stop. I don't care what he said." She tried again. "I was trying to get out of it." I laughed, sharp and loud. "Remember, I'm the spreadsheet guy, the paperwork guy, the detail guy." So hearing her say she signed a marriage license because someone said it would be faster made me feel like I was losing my mind. I said, "And you practiced vows." She wiped her face. "Because he made me record something." I stared. "Record what?" She looked down. "A voice memo." My stomach dropped. Of Vows. She nodded, sobbing. So at 2:07 a.m., in that cabin bathroom, she wasn't watching a video. She was recording a voice memo. And she called it practice. I said, "Where is it?" She shook her head. "I deleted it." "You don't just delete things from email," I said. "Show me." She sat back down, shaking, and opened her trash folder. And there it was. An email to Ryan. Subject line, "For tomorrow." Attachment, vows.m4a. My throat tightened. I didn't play it. I couldn't. I didn't need to hear it. The existence of it was enough. I said flat, "Tomorrow." She whispered, "He wanted to meet." I said, "Where?" She said, "The courthouse." The courthouse. So the domestic relations court mail wasn't random. It was active. It was current. It was moving. I felt dizzy. I sat down across from her, like I needed a table between us. I said, "Why didn't you tell me you were married when we started dating?" She whispered, "Because you wouldn't have dated me." I stared at her. "So you took my choice." She cried harder. "I was ashamed." I said, "So you lied." She nodded. I said, "And then when he came back, you kept lying." She nodded again. I leaned forward, voice low. "Do you understand what you've done to me?" She whispered, "Yes." I said, "No, you don't. Because you keep saying, 'I didn't cheat,' like that's the only line that matters." She looked up, eyes red. "I didn't want him. I want you." I laughed again, but it cracked this time. "Then why are you signing marriage documents with him?" She reached for my hand across the table. I pulled back. She flinched. That moment, me pulling back, did something. It made the reality land for her. She whispered, "What do you want me to do?" I said, "I want the truth." She nodded, breathing hard. "Okay," I said. "Did you meet him more than once?" She hesitated. I felt anger flare in my chest. "Kayla," she whispered, "twice." I closed my eyes. I said, "Where?" "Coffee shop," she said. Then, "A hotel lobby." "Hotel lobby. That's the soap. That's the smell." She added quickly, "We didn't go up. We didn't." "I don't care," I reminded her. "I care that you went. You hid it. And you were participating." She broke down again. "He pressured me." I said, "And you didn't call me." She sobbed. "I was scared you'd leave." I said, "So you risked losing me anyway." Silence. Then she said something that made my stomach turn again. She said, "He knows where you work." I stared at her. "What?" She nodded, tears falling. "He looked you up. He, he asked me things about you." My skin crawled. I said, "Why?" She whispered, "Because he thinks you stole me." That sentence made me see Ryan in my head for the first time as a real person, not just a name, a guy who sees human beings like property. I said, "So you invited him into our life?" She shook her head. "I didn't invite him. He found me." I stood up and walked to the kitchen because I needed distance. My hands were trembling. I opened the fridge, stared at nothing, then shut it. There was a little magnet on the fridge from a pizza place. Kayla had written "cake tasting" on our calendar in blue marker. Seeing "cake tasting" while reading marriage license in her inbox felt like a prank. I turned around and said, "Are you going to the courthouse tomorrow?" She shook her head fast. "No, I'll cancel." "You already signed something," I said. "How do I know you're not just saying what I want?" She wiped her face. "Because I'm tired. Because I hate this. Because I don't want him." I stared at her for a long time. And here's where I'm going to be honest. If Kayla had been straightforward from the beginning, if she had told me, "I have this past, I'm still legally tied, I need help getting out," I would have helped. I would have been mad, but I would have helped. But she didn't. She built a relationship with me on a lie. And then she tried to handle the truth in secret when it got messy. That's the betrayal, not one moment, a chain of choices. That afternoon, I left. I went to my sister's place. I didn't tell Kayla where. I just said, I need space. Kayla texted me nonstop. I'm sorry. I'll fix it. I'll show you everything. I love you. Every time my phone buzzed, it felt like a shock. At my sister's, I sat on her couch and stared at the wall. My sister offered water. I didn't drink it. Offered food. I didn't eat. She asked, what happened? And when I told her, her face changed like she wanted to throw up. She's still married, she said. I nodded. And she signed something? My sister asked. I nodded again. My sister said, Jordan, that's not just a fight. That's dangerous. Dangerous. Not violent. Not scary movie dangerous. But life hijacking dangerous. The next morning, I did what I always do when I'm panicking. I look for facts. I called the courthouse. Not to report anyone. Not to get revenge. Just to understand. I asked, if someone is legally married and engaged to another person, what does that mean? The clerk was polite but firm. She said, basically, legally, Kayla can't marry me. Not until she's divorced. And any attempt to marry someone else would be complicated. Complicated. There it was again. After that call, I felt this weird calm because at least something was clear. I went back to the apartment that evening. Kayla was sitting at the kitchen table like she hadn't moved all day. Hair messy, no makeup. Hoodie pulled over her hands. Milo the cat was sitting on the chair next to her like a guard. She looked up when I came in, eyes swollen. Hi, I said. Hi. I sat down across from her. For a minute, neither of us spoke. You could hear a neighbor's TV through the wall, some laugh track, like the universe had jokes. I finally said, you have to understand, I don't know who you are right now. Kayla nodded slowly. I know. I said, if we're going to even consider moving forward, you have to cut him off. She nodded again. I will. I said, not later. Today. She swallowed. Okay. I said, and you need a lawyer. And you need to finalize the divorce. She nodded. Okay. I said, and the wedding is paused. Her face crumpled. Paused? I stared at her. Kayla, you are married. She cried quietly. I know. I said, we're not picking flowers while you're signing marriage papers with someone else. She whispered, I didn't want to. I exhaled. But you did. She nodded. I did. That was the first honest thing she said without trying to wrap it in excuses. I said, show me you're cutting him off. She reached for her laptop with shaking hands. She opened her email. She opened the last thread with Ryan. I saw his messages. Not many words, just pressure. Tomorrow. Be ready. Don't make me come there. Remember what you promised. I felt my jaw tighten. Kayla's fingers hovered over the keyboard. I said, write it. She typed slowly, like every letter hurt. Do not contact me again. I am not meeting you. I am getting legal counsel. Any communication goes through a lawyer. She looked up at me like she wanted approval. I just said, send it. She hit send, and then she started shaking like she'd stepped off a cliff. I watched her. Part of me felt bad. Another part of me was furious that it took me nearly losing my mind for her to do this. Then, like some nightmare timing, there was a knock at the door. 3 knocks. Slow. My stomach dropped. Kayla's face turned white. I said, who is that? She whispered, I don't know. but her eyes said she knew. I stood up and walked to the door. I didn't open it. I looked through the peephole. There was a man in the hallway, mid-30s, neat hair, button-up shirt like he was going to an interview, hands in pockets like he owned the place. He looked up at our door like he was looking at a familiar problem. I felt my blood go cold because I'd never seen him, but I knew who it was. Ryan. I backed away from the door like it was hot. Kayla whispered, "Jordan." I held up a hand. "Don't." The knock came again. Then a voice calmed through the door. "Kayla, open up." Hearing his voice in my hallway made my skin crawl. Kayla stood up, shaking. "I told him not to come." I stared at her. "How does he know where we live?" She whispered, He had my old address, and he found the new one." I clenched my jaw. "Through what?" "The court." She nodded, crying again. "Probably." The voice came again, closer. "I'm not leaving until we talk." I didn't open the door. I didn't threaten him. I didn't do anything stupid. I said loud enough for him to hear, "You need to leave. Now." There was a pause. Then he said, calm, "Who is that?" I said, "That doesn't matter. Leave." He laughed lightly like he was amused. "Kayla, is this your new guy?" Kayla made a small sound like she couldn't breathe. I felt a surge of rage, but I kept my voice steady. I said, "Leave, or we call the police." Ryan went quiet for a second. Then he said, "Kayla, you can't ignore me. We're married." That sentence hit like a hammer. "We're married," like it was a leash he could yank. Kayla whispered, "Stop." I looked at her. She looked broken. Then Ryan said, "I'll be back later." And I heard his footsteps walk away. The hallway went quiet. Kayla slid down the wall and started sobbing. I stood there staring at the door, fists clenched, heart pounding. And in that moment, everything changed. Because now it wasn't just a hidden past. It wasn't just emotional betrayal. It was a real person showing up at my door, claiming rights to my fiancée. I sat down across from Kayla again. I said low, "You brought this to my doorstep." She cried, "I didn't want to." I said, "But you did." She covered her face. "I'm sorry." I stared at her. I don't know if sorry fixes this. That night I told her I needed her to leave. Not forever, not a breakup statement. I just needed the apartment to breathe. She asked, voice shaking, "Where am I supposed to go?" I said, "Your mom, your friend, anywhere, just not here." She nodded, packed a bag, and left quietly. Milo the cat followed her to the door and then turned back to me, confused. When she was gone, I sat on the couch and just stared at the wedding binder on the coffee table. Our names on the cover, our date, it felt like a joke. The next day I canceled everything I could without announcing to the whole world. I told the venue we needed to postpone for personal reasons. I told the photographer the same. I didn't blast Kayla. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted control of my own life again. My family asked questions. I gave vague answers. I hated that I had to protect the story while I was the one bleeding from it. Kayla kept texting, updates, lawyer, documents, apologies, and then 2 days later, she sent me a screenshot, a court date, divorce hearing scheduled. I stared at it for a long time. Part of me felt relief. Part of me felt disgust that this was happening only because I caught her. I met Kayla a week later at a coffee shop in the middle of the day. Public, bright, people around. I didn't want drama. I wanted clarity. She looked exhausted. Dark circles, hair pulled back, no cute outfit, just survival mode. She sat down and said, "Thank you for meeting me." I said, "I'm here to listen." Not to forgive. She nodded, tears instantly forming. Fair. I said, tell me everything. No edits. And she did. She told me she was ashamed. She told me she changed her last name socially and pretended it didn't exist. She told me she thought if she loved someone new hard enough, the past would disappear. She told me when Ryan reached out 6 weeks ago, it started with, I just want closure. Then it turned into pressure. Then it turned into threats. Not physical threats, legal threats, emotional threats. The kind that make you feel trapped in your own history. She told me she met him because she thought it would calm him down. She told me she signed that marriage application because he convinced her it would speed things up, which still makes me angry because it's such a bad excuse. But I could see how exhausted and scared she was. Then she said something I wasn't ready for. She said, I didn't tell you because I liked being the version of me you saw. I stared at her. She continued, voice trembling. With you, I was normal. I was Kayla Lewis. I wasn't Kayla Sanders. I wasn't that girl who made a stupid choice. I was clean. Clean. I thought about that hotel soap smell again. I said, and you were willing to let me marry you without knowing the truth. She whispered, yes. I asked, why? She looked me in the eye, and for once, she didn't try to dodge. She said, because I'm selfish, because I wanted you more than I wanted honesty. That sentence made my chest ache because it was the most honest thing she'd said. I sat back and said, do you realize what you did to my trust? She nodded. Yes. I said, no, you don't. Because trust isn't just, don't cheat. Trust is, I know who you are. I know what I'm signing up for. She started crying again. I know. I said, and Ryan showing up at our door? That's not just your problem. That becomes my problem. That becomes our life. She wiped her face. I know. I stared out the window for a moment. Cars passing. People walking with laptops and pastries like the world was fine. I said, so what now? She took a shaky breath. I finish the divorce. I get a restraining order if I can. I go to therapy. I rebuild myself. I nodded slowly. She whispered, and I hope you'll still be there. I looked at her for a long time, and here's where my imperfections come in. Because part of me wanted to say yes. Part of me wanted to rescue what we had. I didn't want to start over. I didn't want to admit I almost married someone who wasn't legally free to marry me. But another part of me felt this hard truth. Even if she never touched Ryan, she still gave him a place in our relationship. She still lied to me every day by omission. And that lie didn't start 6 weeks ago. It started the day we met. I said quietly, I don't know. Kayla's face crumpled, but she didn't argue. She just nodded like she deserved it. We left the coffee shop separately. Over the next month, I watched from a distance as she actually followed through. Divorce paperwork filed, court dates, lawyer emails. She sent proof without me asking, like she knew she had to. Ryan tried to contact her again, according to Kayla. She didn't respond. She documented it. She forwarded it to her lawyer. And in the middle of all that, I was dealing with my own mess, because I didn't just lose trust in Kayla. I lost trust in my own instincts. How did I not know she was married? How did I not catch it earlier? How did I ignore the fan noise, the night walks, the random calls, the wedding website paranoia? I kept replaying the cabin moment. 2:07 a.m. Red clock numbers. Her whispering. The way she looked at me like I was the problem. That gaslighting part hurt almost more than the secrets, because it made me question my reality. And that's what betrayal does. It doesn't just break your heart, it breaks your confidence in your own senses. Eventually, Kayla asked to meet again. She said she had something to tell me. I agreed, but I told her we're meeting in public again. We met at the same coffee shop. She sat down, hands wrapped around her cup like she needed heat to function. She said, "It's finalized." I felt a strange rush of relief. I said, "Okay." She nodded. "I'm legally divorced." I exhaled like I'd been holding my breath for months. She looked at me, eyes soft. "I want to start over, if you'll let me." I stared at her. And this is where people will argue in the comments, I already know. Because what I said wasn't heroic, it wasn't clean. I said, "I care about you, but I can't be engaged to someone who lied about something that big." Kayla nodded, tears forming. "I understand." I said, "And I can't be the guy who has to check the door every time someone knocks." She whispered, "I'm sorry." I looked at her and said, "I believe you're sorry now, but sorry came after you got caught." She flinched. I continued, "And I don't want a marriage that starts with me finding out the truth like it's a crime scene." Kayla cried silently. I sat there feeling like the villain even though I wasn't. I said, "I need time, real time, not a week, not a month. I need to rebuild my head." She nodded, wiping her cheeks. "Okay." We sat in silence for a minute. Then she said, "Do you hate me?" I shook my head slowly. "No, I don't hate you. That's the problem." She looked down. I said, "I just can't unhear Ryan at 2:07 in the morning." Her shoulders shook. I stood up and said, "Take care of yourself." She whispered, "You too." I walked out, and I won't lie. After I left, I sat in my car and stared at the steering wheel for a long time, because part of me still wanted to go back in and say, "We can fix it." But the other part of me knew that if I did that, I'd be teaching myself to accept betrayal as a normal starting point. Now it's been a few weeks since that second coffee shop meeting. The wedding is officially canceled, not postponed, canceled. People have opinions. Family members say things like, "But you love her." Friends say things like, "At least she didn't physically cheat." And those comments make me want to scream because they miss the point. It's not a scoreboard. It's not how far did it go. It's the fact that I was about to legally tie myself to someone who didn't legally exist the way I thought she did. It's the fact that she let me plan a future while she was still trapped in a past she wouldn't admit. It's the fact that I had to become suspicious to protect myself, and I hate what that did to me. Kayla still checks in sometimes. She asks how I'm doing. She doesn't push. She's calmer now, like a person who finally stopped running. And me? I'm trying to learn the difference between empathy and self-abandonment, because you can feel sorry for someone and still say no. You can understand someone's fear and still protect your life. I keep thinking about that moment at the cabin, not the whisper, the moment after when she looked at me and called me insane. That's what I can't shake. Because if she had just told me the truth, even the ugly parts, I might have stood with her through the divorce and the court mess and Ryan's pressure. But instead, she made me the enemy. She made me the guy who overreacts. And then Ryan showed up at my door like a reminder that secrets don't stay secret. They just grow teeth. So here's my final thought, and it's not pretty. If someone can hide a whole marriage from you, they can hide anything. And if someone makes you doubt what you heard with your own ears, they're not protecting the relationship. They're protecting their lie. I know people will disagree. I know some of you will say I should have forgiven her because she was scared. Others will say I should have left the first time she stepped outside for those calls. Some will say I'm cold. Some will say I'm weak for even considering staying. That's why I want to hear from you. If you were me,